Welcome to Beyond Sunday, the podcast where we dive a little bit deeper into the King of Kings message series and talk about what we're taking beyond Sunday. My name is Dina Newsom, and I am ecstatic to have some wonderful guests this week of Memorial Day. Go ahead and introduce yourself, friends.
Hi, I'm Julie Easley. I'm the executive director here at King of Kings.
And I'm Zach Zinder, and the multi-site director. And Dina, you're so loving. The last 3 times I've been on, you've used words like great, amazing, and now this time, wonderful guests. Yeah. And I agree for my counterpart, but normally I'm looking around like, who do you have that I don't know about? But I think you're actually talking about me, which just feels Zach. So loving and special. So thank you.
I have a plethora of adjectives that I like to use.
Well, now that you know, I'm listening and I'll be looking for new ones.
You know, some days you're wonderful just because you said yes, you'd come.
There you go.
No, I'm just
no matter what you say.
The available people.
Right. Well, it's true.
No, thanks for joining us. This week was Memorial Day, and so we had a special message from Pastor Greg talking about greater love, a family legacy of sacrifice, and he kind of leaned into a comparison of Memorial Day. So my opening question to you guys is, what's a great Memorial Day memory for you, or something that stands out to you about Memorial Day? Like, I'm going to go first. In my neighborhood, there is a family that puts out little flags by our mailboxes every Memorial Day weekend. They used to do it at the 4th of July, and then they switched when they had a veteran in the family that passed away. Wow. And they come and put little flags by the mailboxes in the neighborhood. And that to me is the smallest little thing, but I just love the way it looks in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that's very sweet.
I look forward to that for Memorial Day weekend.
That's awesome. So on my dad's side of the family, we just had a super extended family who I grew up in Illinois. And so we would travel out to this kind of small farm community out in Illinois, St. Anne, Illinois, and all of the extended cousins would get together. And the highlight for us is we would get tractor rides. And it was like a huge deal. We would look forward to that all year. So a cousin of mine just posted a picture of all of us sitting in the cart together, and it was just a fun time.
Yeah.
Yeah, just remembering, I think a great way to remember those that have fought for your freedom is to actually just go out and enjoy and have a really fun, free-filled day, if that makes sense. I think that's the best way to honor them, in addition to all the things that we would normally do, which of course is praying for those. It's saying great things to those that you do know who've lost loved ones and have sacrificed for that. And so I just remember, the fun, free times that a lot of times ends with lots of protein and meat on a grill. And that's what we did yesterday. We grilled up a whole lot of burgers, brats, and dogs. And you know what I found over the years? I'm curious if this is true for your families and our circle of friends. Far less people are eating buns than they used to.
Totally.
So, okay, tell me what you think. Maybe I tip my hats there to the question I'm about to ask. But we at our house had, 14 hamburgers, 14 bratwursts, and 8 hot dogs eaten. How many buns were consumed with those pieces of meat, which totals 14, 28, 36? What would you guess?
I would guess 1 package of hamburger buns and 1 of hot dog buns, and that's it.
Like 8 and 8?
Mm-hmm.
Well, logically I would say 36, but since you prefaced the answer, I'm thinking it's not.
You're right.
Let's say half, 18.
Okay, 14 total.
Wow. It's insane. I way over by buns.
So I guess what I'm saying out there is if you're the cooker or the providing the meat and buns, maybe cut the bun intake in half or less of what the actual amount of meats are.
Like a third.
Yeah, maybe a third. Because crazy.
I know. Thankfully, they're not that expensive, so I don't feel terrible if they go to waste. But still, it's not good.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like after last week's talk, Zach, we just need to start. I'm telling you, the eating challenge is your next book.
I know. The red letter eating. Let's go.
We're going to have a cookbook and all sorts of stuff.
Yeah.
We just
water will turn into wine. It's going to be awesome.
On food a lot. We like food, apparently, or like to talk about it.
Or both. Yeah.
It's good.
Okay, so Greg's message was really talking about sacrifice. What really stuck out to you guys? What are you taking beyond Sunday from that?
Yeah, I think he talked about 3 types of sacrifice, right? Physical, spiritual, and financial, I believe were the 3. And I think the overall message, though, what I'm taking beyond Sunday is freedom. We can't experience freedom without sacrifice. And we have people that have done that for us for the freedom we have in our nation. And we have a God who's done that for us for freedom spiritually. And even in the church, we have many who have sacrificed financially for us to be able to have a church family like we do. And I really believe what I'm taking beyond Sunday is that if you really want to talk about legacy, and I'm really big into legacy, I don't think you can have a really long-lasting legacy without sacrifice. And so what's my sacrifice? Because that'll probably be my legacy. I can do a whole lot of things in life, but I think probably the sacrifice would be remembered, potentially.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think anybody who's done anything truly noble in this world, and I'm talking from the smallest thing, like parents sacrificing for their children, all the way up to people who've changed the world, right? The course of human events, sacrifice has been a part of it. And when when you talk about legacy, when I think about what I would hope my family and my children would say was that I was a person of sacrifice. And not in a doormat sort of way, but in a way that I really gave myself for the good of others. It just feels like such a noble aspiration.
What really stuck out to me was my birthday is near Memorial Day every year. So Memorial Day is a big holiday to me because it's just right about that. And I like spending time with family. And I know what Memorial Day is all about, but I had never really intertwined that with the story of Jesus' sacrifice. Like they had always kind of been separate parallel lines. And I feel like Greg really leaned into, this is the ultimate sacrifice. Like we want to talk about this holiday that's celebrating people who sacrificed for our freedoms, but who gave the bigger sacrifice for our heavenly freedom? And it was just kind of like a little light bulb moment for me where I was just like, oh my gosh, those things are so aligned.
Yes.
And it seems stupid to me that I had never paired them up like in my whole life before of how, that was really kind of a light bulb moment for me. And it's one of those things that I thought, how did I miss this? You know, it's so simple. It's right there in front of you. But,
right.
Yeah.
And that sacrifice narrative is woven through so much of the Old Testament and then culminates in Christ. But it's just a huge part of the story of the Bible. I mean, you can see it all the way from the very beginning, all the way through.
And I think too, when you talk about that, Dina, it feels like, it doesn't just feel like it. Americans love their freedom.
Yes.
To a fault sometimes, right? I think sometimes we celebrate that freedom, but then it's almost like most Americans would choose, probably people would just choose freedom without constraints, freedom without limits. And that's actually not that healthy of a freedom. And what we need more so than American freedom or national freedom is spiritual freedom. And that's what Jesus did for us. It may not feel like that on your day-to-day, that's what your biggest need is, but it is your biggest need, that spiritual reconciliation, that spiritual freedom. And the freedom we have in this world is fabulous and wonderful, and we ought to celebrate those that have fought for that and given it to us. But the freedom that Christ gives us is freedom that we get to have eternally. And we lose sight of that so much in our time-stamped years in this world, where we'll be here for, Lord willing, decades, but then we're not here anymore. And now we've got freedom that lasts forever.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm glad you finally heard it.
Yeah.
Which
Took
is
me
good.
several years, but that's okay. No.
Yeah, it's
All good.
And may others hear it. Come on. You need the
Yeah.
freedom of Jesus, and there ain't nothing like it. And as free as we can be in this world, praise God for it, for the people that have fought for it. Praise God for Jesus,
Yeah.
that the biggest answers to life's biggest questions have already been taken care of through his sacrifice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So speaking of sacrifice, can you guys think of a time when you have had to sacrifice something for someone else and how you dealt with that?
I mean, I'm sure you two would agree. Parenthood is a crash course in sacrificing.
Mhm.
I remember the first couple of years when Dale and I were married, I was like, man, this isn't that hard. We're getting along great. And then Michael came along and I'm like, you're selfish. He's like, no, you're selfish. And just learning like, oh, I'm going to have to pour all of my energies into keeping this little person alive. Like he's contributing nothing to the equation at all.
It's actually a net
all
negative.
me. Yeah, it's 100. He's just sucking energy, right? Like a little black hole. So yeah, and that doesn't end when they start crawling or walking. It doesn't even end when they turn 18 and move out of your house.
Mm-hmm.
Now, certainly there's a lot less demand on your time and on your energy. And thankfully, all of my sons are now independent adults, but there's still a degree of sacrifice there, even if it's just praying sacrificially for them or, helping out where you can. Parenthood is a beautiful life lesson in what sacrifice is about.
Yeah. I'd echo that. And, yes, I've sacrificed. Yes, there have been times. I don't want to tell you about them because then I lose my heavenly reward. Somewhat kidding there. But I also don't want to just make it seem like I'm amazing at this. I think I struggle with sacrificing at times. I think if you, line up the physical, financial, spiritual, I think I'm stronger in, parts of that than others. Like I think I'm stronger at financially sacrificing than most people. I think but on the day to day, like the serving, which is a sacrifice as well, I'm probably weaker. And so that was a big, I guess, goal of mine, especially as I wrote Serving Challenge years ago, which is always like trying to study how Jesus did this and become more like him. And for him, the word that I kept coming back to that he was just so good at was he was always available. Like he could have the weight of the world on his shoulders, and he literally did. And he'd still sacrifice his time to be present with the one right in front of him. Mm. And that's where I really struggle. And so I'm trying to learn to be better at that, both in my home, with my wife, with my kids, with my coworkers, and just out and about in my normal busy life. How can I ought to be able, if Jesus did this, I ought to sure be able to do this. I shouldn't take myself that important, that. And so it's a struggle. And I think there's parts of it that I get done that I do right, but I'm also on a journey like everybody of like, how can I be better at that? How can I be more available? How can I treat people not like interruptions in my schedule, but like real people?
Well, and just to kind of encourage you, I think about like there are a lot of different ways that you can sacrifice for people. And I just think about the amount of kind of energy and brain power and time that you spend blessing people that you'll never meet. And so I think it's easy to downplay the stuff that we're naturally good at and look at where we struggle. But just as an encouragement to you, boy, I just see you sacrificing a lot for the good of others. So, but, and giving of time, I thought that Tim Keller quote really stuck out at me. Like money is a renewable resource. Time is not. And so the time that we're spending, whether it's working on a project that'll bless other people or sitting down to really listen to someone, giving of time is huge. And thankfully that can look a lot of different ways, and God's gifted us in different ways.
Yeah, the sacrifice that I can think of as part of parenting for me, when I had one child and we had a second on the way, and I knew that for our family, I really wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. Like, I have nothing against working moms, but that was the choice that was right for our family. But that meant sacrifice. That was going to a one-income household and what sacrifices that took. And I love working. Like, I love my jobs. I love being a part of a team, whatever they've been. And so that was a sacrifice to stay at home and do that of what I felt was right for our kids, at that time in our setting. And I can remember there are 9 years between my middle child and my youngest child. And so when my middle daughter started kindergarten, I went and got a job, and I was ecstatic to be back at work. And then my youngest child was a surprise. He was not planned. And when I found out that I was pregnant with him, I wept and wept and wept because I knew I was going to have to quit my job, because I knew once again that was the right choice for our family. I had stayed home with his sisters and I wanted to stay home with him. But I was going to miss my job so much in that time that's not me being totally selfless. Like, there are benefits too to me staying home. But I just remember thinking, I was so sad about that. I was so excited for him and that God had given us another child. But I was so sad about what that meant for the next 5 years of knowing that I was going to be at home. And there's just different isolation and struggles that come with that too.
Yeah.
And so I can remember being so upset about having to sacrifice that. But in the long run, I believe most sacrifices pay off, rewards tenfold more than that, And so that was something that really worked out well for our family.
That's great.
Yeah.
The other piece about sacrifice too is, like, by me sacrificing, it might also force or cause my wife to have to sacrifice. So, right, I'm thinking back to our early, since we're all going parenting, which is super sacrificial. And like, you learn how to be selfless when you have these kids. And, one of the things we wanted to do that was right for us, not saying it's right for everybody, is we wanted to we didn't both want to work full time when our kids were young. And so I had the career, so she sacrificed, or at least the career path that was obvious. And so she sacrificed her time. But then all the hours, quote, that I sacrificed for work, which was a sacrifice, going above and beyond, doing what I needed, also meant that she had to sacrifice, that I wasn't there as much as I ought to. And so sometimes it's challenging, because sometimes my sacrifice causes her to have to sacrifice. And is that the sacrifice that is important, that is right? It's not always easy.
No, it's not.
But that's where family comes in, and where friends come in too, to, like, help hopefully give some understanding to what's happening and whether it's right or not.
Yeah.
So Greg posed the question of how can we live out the idea of being a living sacrifice? And he referenced Romans 12:1 in this. And Romans 12:1 says, "Therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship." How does that verse speak to you? Or how do you feel like we can live out the idea of being a living sacrifice?
I think about just things as simple as when you wake up in the morning and turning your day over to the Lord and saying, I'm not exactly sure what's going to be happening entirely today, but would you please present me with opportunities to share your love, and just kind of set up your brain in a way to be on the lookout for ways that you can give of yourself to other people. I think it's really easy just to hop out of bed and you're like, all right, I'm getting in the shower and we're going to do this thing. But just surrendering your day to God before it starts. Because really, if you talk about offering yourself as a living sacrifice, that's an everyday thing. And so I just want to try to keep that at front of mind. And talking to the Holy Spirit throughout the day, and especially when I'm in meetings, and maybe meetings that are difficult, Lord, what is it that you want me to say in this moment? Not what does Julie want to say necessarily, but what is it that you would have me to say? And giving way to whatever the Spirit is kind of, I feel like he's prompting me towards.
Yeah, I'd echo what Julie said. And I think in addition to that too, I would just talk about each person understanding, if they don't already, what their purpose, what their mission in life is all about. I think so often we have company mission statements or vision, big statements, vision, look ahead, 5-year plans. Awesome. That's great. But do you have that individually? I think coming up with that, and then just every day alongside of what Julie said, the spiritual side of it, of starting your day with God and being in relationship with him, is like, awesome. These are the things I'm going to do today. I'm going to be intentional with what God's given to me. I'm going to do my best with the hours. Here's what I want to accomplish today. Hopefully for your glory, God. And just sticking to it, I think, is really important. I think without vision and without intention, direction, a lot of times we just kind of, revert back to the norm. And the norm is just checking our phone, going through social media, binge watching Netflix, watching sports, eating out, closing our garage, going to bed. Does that make sense? So
yeah.
Obviously the spiritual things of that connection, but then just like, why am I here? And what can I do today that hopefully will help accomplish that mission? Some days may be far more direct to it. Other days may not be, but it may be stuff you have to get done so that you can be that person the next day.
I love lists. I love checking things off lists.
Same.
And so when you look at your day and you've got to accomplish, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, however many things, there was a period in my life where I was really good about putting intentional time in the Word or in worship or in something on my list, but it would always get knocked to the bottom when the day would kind of go off kilter and it wasn't a priority. And then it got to the point where I knew I wanted change. And so that I just created a boundary for myself that I couldn't do anything else until that time was done. Like that was the most important thing. And I kept shoving it aside. That's not sacrificing anything. It'll get done if I have time, But it was making sure that was the first thing on my list. And that was the first thing that I got to check off.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You like to check off lists too, don't you?
Yeah, we all do.
And whenever we're done with this podcast, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to put a check by the podcast recording for today.
What situation have you faced where you needed to speak up or take a stand for what is right?
So I'm going through one right now, kind of in our denomination, without getting into too many details. It feels... I had a friend of mine that I feel like was unfairly treated not long ago, and in many ways has tried to be a leader with forming pastors and leaders in our synod, and the things that he's doing are not being recognized in a positive light for sure, and more so being seen in a negative light. And he's got a podcast that is had a very large reach, and I felt like hosted some really great conversations to talk about, are there new avenues for how we can form pastors with our great theology? And sadly, all that stuff's been looked down upon from leaders, and he's kind of forced to apologize and told to be silent on these issues. And I put a video out in his defense, trying to be less against the authority, but more just, I'm standing up for a friend, because I don't think what happened to him is right. I know his heart. I know who he is. I think we ought to look to him as a leader and ask what worked, what didn't work, and how can we learn from what you've done. And so that's one that is kind of top of mind right now, and I'm still kind of in the middle of it and working through it, and hopefully having conversations from multiple different sides so I have better understanding of the whole thing. But it's a challenge right now, and I think what I'm really frustrated with is just silence. It feels like is never the right answer, and that's kind of what it feels like they've done to him. And like, if we want to move the ball forward, and we need to, like, things aren't going well when you look at faith metrics and trends across the board, but especially in our denomination, like why wouldn't we try to do something new? And don't we want the voices that are trying something? And it's like, if they're not welcome, then I don't know what to do. So,
yeah. Well, and it's hard. I feel like a lot of things in our society right now is, if you're standing up for something, it must mean you're against something else. And so it's immediately a head to head. And that doesn't always have to be the case. You can stand up for what is right without being against any other thought or idea about that too. Yeah.
I don't know if this is standing up for something of what's right, but just being honest and open about my faith. So I joined a neighborhood board. And so after the board meeting was over, one of the women on the board was like, oh, we were at a restaurant, the guys left. And she was like, let's just have dinner and I'd like to get to know you. And she was sharing about all of her accomplishments and all of her children's brilliant accomplishments. And I just started talking to her about my faith and who Jesus meant to me and how he's been important in my life. And it was a really interesting exchange just to watch her kind of defenses go down, or she was able to share with me some things that were challenging in her own life. So I think just being honest about who we are, that like, I'm not a person who has it all together, but I have a faith that really sustains me. And it was a little risky. I'd never really talked to her before, but I thought, you know what? I'm just going to be me and share who I am. And it was great. And we've met since, and I don't regret that exchange at all.
Yeah.
That's good. So another type of sacrifice that Greg talked about was that financial sacrifice. And so one of the questions I have for you is, how does giving cheerfully, like described in 2 Corinthians 9:7, which he referenced, contribute to God's kingdom? So that verse, 2 Corinthians 9:7, is each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. So how does giving cheerfully contribute to God's kingdom?
Yeah, I've got a whole lot to say about this. Coming out in October of 2025 is Giving Challenge, a 40-day generosity study. Hey, I think it's so valuable. For me, I think sometimes what I've found is that in the Bible and in reality, that giving, no matter my attitude or heart, just makes me cheerful and makes me happy. And that's not new science, even though science does say that. That's Jesus. It's more blessed to give than to receive. And when you give to God's kingdom, like, good things happen and smiles are all around. Like, it's a win for everybody. I've never been disappointed or frustrated about being generous. I've always loved seeing those dollars go to work. And it really does like boost happiness and gives cheer to those that give. Gallup did a study, and 120 out of 136 countries participated. And the findings were that if you want to grow in your happiness, you can do one of two things: double your income every year or donate to a charity.
Okay, let's do the second.
And I'm like, one of those sounds a whole lot easier.
Yes.
Right? And so I've been asking the question lately, can money buy you happiness? And I'm like, it kind of depends on what you do with it. It feels like if you give it away, you're going to be more cheerful and you're going to be happy. Now, I do think that our attitude's important. It's great to give cheerfully with a good attitude. My point is, though, is maybe if you're not there yet, just try it a few times, and then maybe your attitude will come alongside of it. Because where your treasure goes, there your heart goes. So sometimes we hold back, and it's like, and we wait for God to stir our hearts. And I think biblically what God is asking is, no, give me your treasure, and then your heart will be in it. Mm-hmm. And so the order, I think, is really important. And when you give, it's just going to provide cheer and happiness everywhere, including inside of you. So that's a little bit of what's coming in October.
It's going to be good.
Yeah, if you're here at King of Kings, we are going through that whole thing together this fall. So
it'll be good.
We'll get to talk about it here on the podcast and in our messages.
Yeah, it's great. I really have, in the last couple of years, been structuring my thinking about my relationship with Jesus in just the picture of like a pilgrimage. Like, he and I are doing things together in the world. And when I pray about things, we're working together. And when I give, we're working together. And I just feel like that's such a privileged position that he's given to us. So, right, I don't like that God is my co-pilot business, right? He's clearly the pilot.
Jesus, take the wheel.
But he does say, hey, you want to sit next to me? And we're going to do some really awesome things together. And so I view giving as, I am cheerful about it because, wow, I get to be on this big adventure with him in all aspects of my life, in praying, in the way I live my life, in giving. It just makes the Christian life so much more interesting when you view it as like an adventure you're taking with Jesus. So, I mean, it's such a rich life. It's such a joy-filled life. Is it perfect life? No. And are there hard things? For sure. But overall, man, it's just something I think about that book, Pilgrim's Progress. He's going through these different challenges, but it's leading somewhere and it's exciting. And that can be our life, and giving can be a part of that.
And you talk about legacy too, which is all about sacrifice and financial. Like, you can't take anything with you.
No.
Mm-hmm.
But what you can do is you can send your money ahead. You can give your money. You can be generous, and that can still create ripple effects years, decades, generations later with our finances. And that's one of the unique things about giving, is that it can do just that. It's something that God gives to us to give away now and not to hold on to. And when you do that, you can create quite a legacy and quite an impact that will make a major difference.
Yeah.
So I love visual imagery. And so when I was kind of figuring out this question, the thing that I kept thinking about with cheerful giving was when my son was probably 5 or 6 years old. And in the winter, the Salvation Army bell ringers would be out with the little buckets, and you'd, see if you had some change or maybe $1 that my son can put in the bucket, because then they'd let him ring the bell.
Ooh.
And he would just light up. And that's the image that I think, I want a bell that I can ring.
Yes. Yes.
Every time I give, like, I'm going to go drop some stuff off at Goodwill. Let me ring a bell that I just did this, or I'm passing the bucket in church. Hey, let me ring a bell, and a bell for you, and a bell for you. Like, so in my mind, that's the image that I get. And there's such a little, whether it's a dopamine kick in my brain or it's just the happy memory that's associated with it, that's what I think of. And I'm like, I want all my giving to be like that. Like, whether it's small or large, then I want to ring that bell, not because I want the attention pointed to me, but because I want it to be joyful.
Yes.
Like, I want that cheer with it. Yeah.
I love that.
All right. As we wrap up here, are there any final takeaways you have from this message that you want to share?
I think I would just like to say a big thank you to all of the people who have served our country. As I have 3 sons who would be in the age of someone who would serve the United States, you realize what a sacrifice so many people have made for our freedom. And it is true that Christ has set us free, and there have been a lot of people who have secured that for us here in America. And let's just use our freedom well, not to satisfy or be, self-indulgent, satisfy ourselves, but to really give to others.
Yeah, that's so well said. I'd echo the same. Thank you to those that have paid the ultimate price, those who lost their lives, and the families that, like we said earlier, where sacrifice of you usually requires sacrifice of others too.
Yeah.
Means the world to me. So thank you.
Well, and I think that that's just very honoring, and that's like a great segue, not planned, into our next sermon series is the honor code. Mm-hmm. So next week when we're back, we're going to be looking at the first message in that series where we're talking about honoring, and Memorial Day is a time to honor that sacrifice, to honor our freedoms, to honor the things that God gives us, whether that's our giving, our spiritual sacrifice, whatever. So, we'll be back next week to look at that first week of the honor code. And until then, let's keep living our faith beyond Sunday.